If you're a thrill seeker, the Alton Towers Resort is the place to visit. There's so many different rides and attractions for all ages. In fact, there's over 40 in total, 10 of those being roller coasters. Each ride in the park is unique, and some are even world's firsts and record breakers. But what could be improved with these rides at Alton Towers to make them even better than they already are? In today's video, I'm going to be going through all the changes I would love to have seen made with the top rides and roller coasters at the Alton Towers Resort. But first, before we get on into the video, if you do enjoy watching, then please hit that like button to let me know, and if you are new around here, then please consider hitting that subscribe button and ringing that notification bell so you don't miss a single thing, because we make plenty of theme park and adventure videos here which you don't want to miss. Number 6. Rita. Rita is a launched coaster which can be found in the dark forest area of the park. Although the coaster can be quite intimidating to look at off-ride with a launch of 0 to 61 miles per hour in just 2.5 seconds, the overall ride experience, it can be quite rough. Now, even though it would make the coaster more enjoyable if it was slightly smoother, it's not actually the smoothness that I would change first with Rita, it's the overall theme. Now, the theme behind Rita, it's quite confusing, it's not made super clear, but the story behind the ride is that you have to escape the dark forest. Originally, before the area was turned into the dark forest, Rita had a drag racing theme, which made a lot more sense. However, with the dark forest theme, a launched coaster with barely any theming or backstory, it just doesn't go well with the area in my opinion. In future, I would actually like to see them remove Rita completely, and replace it with a more fitting ride. But until then, it would be good to see them expand on the story, or retheme it completely. I mean, if the story is to escape the dark forest, then why do you just end up in the same station that you started off at? It just doesn't make much sense to me, so yeah, the theming is the first thing that I would change about Rita. Number 5, 13. Sticking with the dark forest, let's next talk about the other coaster in the area, 13. Opening in 2010, 13 was advertised to be the world's scariest coaster. However, if you've ever experienced 13, then you will know that it's definitely not the world's scariest coaster. In fact, it's not even close to being the scariest coaster in the park. Don't get me wrong, it has that brilliant surprise element which I won't spoil for you in this video, just in case you haven't rode it. But other than that, it's a pretty basic roller coaster, and it definitely falls into the family roller coaster category. So the first thing that I would change about 13 is make it a bit more scarier. They have that whole indoor section to implement this. Using some of the effects that can be found in the Cursed Alton Manor, which I'll be touching on later, they could make 13 actually scary. As well as this, although it's too late to make any changes now, it would have been good for the coaster to be a little bit longer. The ride experience is really smooth and enjoyable, with some great airtime moments, so it's sad that it's all over so fast. So just a couple changes that I would make to 13, but overall it is a super enjoyable coaster, and one of my favourites in the park. Number 4, Galactica. Moving on to Forbidden Valley now, which is the home of 2 roller coasters, one being Nemesis, which has been closed for the past season, but will be reopening this season after its retrack. And it's because of this I'm not including Nemesis in this video, because they're already improving Nemesis, which is an already great roller coaster. But today I'm going to be talking about the other coaster, and that is Galactica. Back in 2016, the name of this flying B&M roller coaster was changed to Galactica from its previous name Air. This was so that they could introduce the ride's brand new feature, virtual reality headsets. Now, this was a complete fail, and by the end of the 2019 season, the headsets were removed completely, making it pretty much the same as it was before. So if I was going to change anything about Galactica, it would be to change it back to the original theming of Air, and also give that indoor section before the lift hill some love, because currently it looks very empty and a little bit grotty. With the theme of Galactica, there is so much that they could do with that space, so it would be great to see that in future. Now, with the new Nemesis on the way, and with Subterra reopening during the 2023 season, it would also be really cool to see Galactica themed to the Phalanx in some way. It would really tie the whole Forbidden Valley area together, so hopefully we get to see this happen one day. Number 3, the Smiler. Now let's talk about one of the most popular roller coasters in the park, the Smiler. This world record breaking 14 inversion coaster is fantastic, and you can see why it is loved by so many. And it's not just those inversions that make it so great. With every great coaster comes a great backstory, and the Smiler is an example of this. Now, to put it simply, the Smiler is a correctional device created by the Ministry of Joy which marmalizes your mind, ultimately turning you into a smiling advocate. It's a great story with so much potential. However, in my opinion, what's lacking on this coaster is the theming to actually tell this backstory. Originally, when the coaster opened back in 2013, they did a good job of explaining what the Marmalizer was and what each of those different legs does, but now, unless you did your research on it, you wouldn't know anything about this story whilst you're on the ride. A coaster at Alton Towers that does this well is the Wicker Man. You know what the coaster is about even before heading into the queue, because you see that massive Wicker Man structure, and as you head through the queue there's theming all around it, and it ends with that pre-show telling you the story, which enhances that ride experience. The Smiler just doesn't have this, and the station, which I'll describe just as I did with Galactica, it's a little bit empty and a little bit grotty. There's just not a lot in there other than some lights and multicoloured stairs. What I would love to see with a Smiler is a pre-show telling you the different elements of the ride and how you're going to be marmalized. I'd also love to see more theming around the station and even around the track itself. Now, don't get me wrong, this coaster is still fantastic and one of my favourites in the park, but I feel like these changes would make this coaster even more special. Number 2, the Curse at Alton Manor. Last year, the biggest thing to happen at Alton Towers was the opening of the Curse at Alton Manor. If you don't already know, this attraction was previously an interactive dark ride called Jewel, but Alton Towers decided to take out that interactive element and re-theme the ride to make it more immersive and more spooky. The Curse at Alton Manor is a fantastic ride and a massive improvement from Jewel. In fact, I nearly didn't include it on this list, because there's nothing in the actual ride itself that I would change. What I love about it is that they keep adding and changing parts of the attraction, as well as that there's loads of hidden Easter eggs too, which you won't notice after just one ride. It's a very re-rideable attraction, and by far one of the best dark rides in the country. So I wouldn't change anything about the ride itself, but one thing that I would change is the way that the pre-show works. Although I love the pre-show, unless there's a big queue, it's possible some guests miss it completely. This pre-show tells you the story behind the ride, which helps make you understand what is going on when you're actually on the ride itself. Due to the high throughput of the ride, it's rare that you ever see a big queue for the Curse at Alton Manor, so a lot of the time, unless you knew there was a pre-show there, most guests could just walk straight past it without realising. So if I was to change just one thing about the Curse at Alton Manor, it would be to hold guests in that pre-show room just like they do with the Wicker Man. Having said that, if they were to do this, it would of course slow down the operations of the ride and of course create a longer wait time. So it is understandable why Alton Towers decided to make this pre-show optional. So if you haven't yet been on the Curse at Alton Manor, then make sure to check out that pre-show because it's honestly so good and you won't regret it. Number 1, Oblivion. Finally, let's talk about Oblivion. This coaster was the world's first vertical drop roller coaster, and even 26 years on, it's still a favourite in the park. It may not be the only vertical drop roller coaster in the world anymore, but that drop is still one of the best out there. So what would I change about Oblivion? Well, as I said, the ride is 26 years old now, and although my opinion may be a little bit controversial, Oblivion's starting to look a little bit outdated. The queue-line videos featuring the Lord of Darkness are really good, but it would be good to see them updated at some point. Some parts of the very long queue line do need a bit of freshening up, because at the moment it's starting to show its age. Having said that, the station is still looking great, and I'll always love the pre-ride video before you go up the lift hill. Now, something I would love to see added in future at some point is on-ride audio. I know at one point you were able to hear the words "don't look down" before descending down that huge drop, so one day it would be great to have that back. What are your thoughts on Oblivion? Do you think it's time for a change? Let me know down in the comments. So these are just some things that I would have done differently to these rides and roller coasters at the Alton Towers Resort. These are of course my opinions, so I would love to know. What would you have done differently? What changes would you have made? Let me know down in the comments because I would love to know your thoughts. There is an absolutely massive year ahead for the Alton Towers Resort, so make sure to stay tuned for all the vlogs and videos covering the park throughout 2024. But until then, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.